Oddworld. If you don't know what Oddworld is, then shame on you. Like, go outside with a shotgun and just come back inside and continue watching this video. And then kill yourself. The series started in 1997 with the release of Oddworld's Abe's Odyssey on the PlayStation 1, and received critical acclaim for basically being Prince of Persia but actually fun. Soon after, a sequel was released, Oddworld Abe's Exoddus, which was basically Abe's Odyssey but, well, yeah, it was basically Abe's Odyssey. But holy crapoly did they improve and tweak every possible part of the game to create what is, in my 100% humble of humblest humble bundle opinions, the closest to perfection any game has ever achieved. Whoa, okay then. So you'll have to excuse me a little bit if I'm spurging out over these games, because obviously when I hold them in such high regard, it almost feels criminal that I've been making videos for 3 years now and haven't even talked about it once. Now Oddworld did get a few more games. 2. I'd classify that as a few. One was amazing and the other was slightly less so, but really we didn't see much of Oddworld for about 9 years when they were suddenly like, yo, what's up, we're fucking back. Have a remaster, bitches. And don't you dare call it a remake or the creator will be after your head. And what with the remake master of Abe's Exoddus coming out soon, what better time is there to talk about Abe's Exoddus? Siz's weird Gameboy Colour port. Oh goody. Yep, after 9 long months, Port Patrol is back. The show where I look at weird, interesting, or knockoff ports of video games, and today we are taking a look at Oddworld Adventures 2. But before we can jump into the actual port, I really feel like I need to explain the games at least a little bit because, as you might have guessed from the name, Oddworld is a little bit odd, and it would really help people who know nothing about the games. You know, obviously providing they survived the previous shotgun blast to the face. So you play as this blue guy called Abe, who is about as weak as video game characters come, dying in one hit and generally being fairly average when it comes to his athletic abilities. You are part of a Mudokon race, and have to save other Mudokons who are green by leading them to bird portals. Why is Abe the only blue Mudokon? Good question! The Mudokons are being enslaved by a species known as the Glukkons and their gunmen the Sligs. You have to rescue them because they are keeping you as slaves and want to use you and them to make food because their profits are down. Oh boy. Now some have the ability to stop time, some can cast powerful spells. Abe can occasionally say hello to people to get them to follow him.
Hello, follow me, okay.
Which isn't the best special ability ever, but you've got to take what you can get when you're a scrawny guy in a loincloth. And that really sums it all up. You sneak through the levels, avoiding all the enemies and rescuing your fellow Mudokons, which often leads to several nerve-wracking encounters that will leave your asshole puckered up tighter than a frickin' snare drum. They also used all the buttons on the PS1 controller, so I bet moving from a console with 8 buttons down to one with 2 is... oh, I bet it's done a work treat. After launching it up and admiring the beautiful in-game voices, which sound like they were recorded using a plastic cup tied to a bit of string, you get a lot of text explaining the story and oh, you better strap in guys because this non-stop thrill ride goes on for 3 whole minutes. Whoa, hey, no one told me Kojima helped make this game. Who am I kidding? If Kojima really did work on this game, about 2/3 of this intro would have just been telling us how he directed it, although David Hayter was in New and Tasty.
Hello. Hello. Hey there.
Oh boy, graphics. They certainly are something. Abe's back looks more jagged than a serrated blade, and a lot of the backgrounds are like overwhelmingly detailed, to the point where it can actually become confusing, and some enemies just look really out of place when compared to the rest of the game. It's strange, but once you get used to it, thankfully it, well, works. And because it's one of those black cartridges, you can even play it in black and white on an original Game Boy, which you definitely won't regret doing. So first things first, the controls I talked about. Surprisingly not awful. Use the A button and the D-pad to talk and you use the B button to jump, while select is used to sneak and possess enemies. It is a little bit finicky, and obviously because it's a game where jump is B, you're probably going to end up pressing the wrong button many times, but you know, it works in a very simplified sort of way. Abe doesn't have the same weight to him that he had in the original, but he gained the whole new ability of having terrifying anatomy. The first level is pretty short, but it does a good good job of introducing you to gameplay concepts, such as causing your own farts to explode, and how motion detectors can kill you, but not this one apparently. One problem with this game though is how it really doesn't actually explain anything to you. Sure, it's not that bad for me as someone who's played Exoddus before, and has played this game loads as a kid, but past the first level there are no more signs to explain how any of the game mechanics work. Like, I'm having a hard time imagining a new player being able to figure out that this hanging scrotum is something you can interact with, that the blue item it drops is meat, yes, really, which you need to throw to distract the enemies, which doesn't really help the game's difficulty that much. Whoa, a game where you can only take one hit is hard, who would have guessed? Now all the Oddworld games are hard, the original especially, and indeed the difficulty has been passed on to this game, and I suppose some of this can be thanked due to how a lot of the levels are taken from the original. You will die a lot while playing this game, but thankfully there are no lives, so your only punishment is being sent back to the beginning of the level, which can take anywhere between 30 seconds to 5 minutes to beat depending on how long the level actually is. Now, are some of the deaths total bollocks? Yeah, definitely. Turns out Abe has glass ankles, so any drop higher than a footstool will make him collapse. But to the game's credit, the puzzles are actually pretty well designed, and manage to produce the same butthole tightening action that the original game graced us with. It's actually quite impressive how well they mimicked the original game's style with how little they had to work with on the Game Boy. Of course, as you might have guessed from the 2 in the title, this wasn't their first attempt, but the less said about that one the better. It's just a shame then that the game does have these 1 or 2 problems that unfortunately hold it back. First things first, oh my god, the audio, why? Apparently someone thought that the best way to signify electricity is to rape my ear for the entire time, like, wow, it's more grating than a freaking hacksaw. The other sound effects are thankfully not as painful as that one, and the voice recordings are, well, you know. I can appreciate that the original game had voices in it, but when the game needs to literally pause everything that's going on for a split second just to play a sound clip, which even then is so quiet you can barely hear it, I honestly wonder if it's even worth it. The music is fine, the first time you hear it, but then you listen to it again, and again, and again, and it gets really repetitive towards the end of this game's 1 hour playtime. And perhaps the most annoying thing with the game, and one that will no doubt be super boring because I have to talk about gameplay mechanics, whoa, is how the game can't keep to a grid system. Now, it might not look it, but the Oddworld games all take place on a grid, meaning that no matter what you do, where you jump or how you stop, you will always land within one of the predetermined areas on the grid. Now, the game did a good enough job of hiding it so it didn't feel restrictive, but it was noticeable enough so the player always knew how far one step would take them, so they could easily position themselves to interact with levers or deactivate mines. Now, Oddworld Adventures 2 also follows a grid, but it messes up. Constantly. Like, it is so easy just to fall out of the grid layout, so the next step you take always ends up being super short. It might not sound like much, but when you need to position yourself in areas where one step too little or too much could mean instant death, it can really be jarring when you're expecting to take a large step, but instead you just awkwardly shuffle to the side. Good god, that entire paragraph was so boring. So in the end then, Oddworld Adventures 2 is basically an incredibly simplified and watered down Abe's Exoddus, which is, well, kinda redundant to say since that's what you'd probably expect. While nothing in this version manages to live up to how absolutely perfect the original was, that isn't to say it's terrible. It has its flaws, sure, but it does a good job of emulating the very basics of what makes Oddworld. Now, I would be lying if I said I didn't want more from it, mostly the graphics. Definitely the graphics. Like, seriously, you get 5 people to work on the graphics and this is the best you can come up with? The gameplay could also definitely do with some tweaking to make it less awkward to play, but overall, you know, it's alright. And as always with these videos, I rate the port on a scale of 1 to 15, with 1 being worse than the original, 10 being on par, and 15 being better. And I would probably say that Oddworld Adventures 2 deserves around a 6.5. It does the very basics of what makes Oddworld so great. Nothing more, nothing less. It isn't a stellar port, but it isn't a terrible one either. Definitely much better than anything else I've talked about so far. You can pick it up for a pretty sweet £1 on Amazon, but to that I would also reply you could buy the original for like free, so why would you not go for the original? Also, the last level makes me want to kill myself. Oh my god, it's so fucking hard.